It was recently announced that ESPN made a major deal with the NFL acquiring assets like the NFL Network, RedZone, and NFL Fantasy, which will merge with ESPN Fantasy. In exchange, the NFL will get a 10% ownership stake in ESPN. Joining us to discuss the implications of this deal are Ocean Media's SVP Client Services, Gregg Bender, and Senior Director of Media Investment, Kevin Cozine. So I guess my first question is, how will this shift ESPN's role in the NFL media ecosystem? Has ESPN become the one-stop shop for NFL content across both linear and digital platforms? Greg, what do you think?
Well, ESPN getting this deal is a big deal for them. I mean, sports is king in the fragmented media landscape we're in today, and NFL is certainly the crown jewel. And they're going to receive a lot of benefits. I believe they're going to receive a lot of benefits from this deal. They're going to have more NFL games. They have probably the most NFL content. And because of their partnership with the NFL, they enhance the opportunity to get even better games, more compelling games. And then when it's up for the rights negotiations, they could be perhaps in a better position to have more favorable rights when they come up for renewal. And of course, coming out with their D2C app this fall, and that's just going to make the app, once the NFL content becomes available on it, more compelling. And ultimately, it strengthens their position as the sports leader, which is a real key differentiator for them in a very cluttered streaming environment.
I think to echo Greg's point, it positions ESPN to be able to be out in the marketplace, as Greg said, to say we have the most NFL content, and what that gives them specifically in terms of advertising is the ability to leverage that to package with other properties and really be in a really strong position out in the marketplace. So it's definitely a smart strategic move on their part.
So, kind of a follow-up to that. What does ESPN's new DTC platform mean for cable? Does this accelerate cord cording, or is $30 a month too steep for sports fans? Like, Kevin, are you shelling out $30 a month?
Well, I think it makes it easier. So that, yes, I think as a sports fan, if you want to have that one-stop shop, as you mentioned, and have it be a little easier, you're going to shell out the $30 a month. We'll see what my wife has to say about that. But I think also to the previous point, it does sort of accelerate the that migration away from cable, because for some people the last thing they were holding on to, that the thing that was preventing them from cutting that cord, was football. Where else am I going to get football? RedZone in particular. So I think this will definitely accelerate it.
Yeah,
So,
I agree with
yeah.
Kevin's point about accelerating cord cutters who are just hanging on to their cable subscription because of sports. So I think that'll definitely help. But I think it remains to be seen how people react to the $30 price point. I mean, that'll put them as, more expensive than any of the entertainment streamings out there. So $30 is certainly not nothing. So even ESPN are kind of coming with some really modest goals in terms of new customer acquisition that it's going to drive. But they're smart in that if you're a cable subscriber, you're going to get that for free. You'll just have access to that. And I think that's important because it'll help build scale and get the app to become a little bit more sticky as people get used to it. And then aligns with Disney's overall strategy to try to bundle their offerings. And now ESPN, the direct-to-consumer app, just becomes yet another part of the bundle that they can do with Disney Plus and Hulu.
So one part that caught my eye was the NFL's ownership stake in ESPN. Over the past few years, we've learned about ESPN's struggle with ratings, increasing operating costs due to rising media rights. Greg, why does the ownership stake make any sense for the NFL?
Sure. Actually, I think it makes quite a bit of sense. But let's start with the assets that ESPN are now going to have access to. NFL Network's been trying to sell that for a number of years, and they just haven't had any takers at the price point that they were looking for. So this has become actually a nice viable option, recognizing that they weren't able to sell it. And based on what I've read, at 10% of what the current value is or assessed value is, comes to about $2.5 billion, which is not a small number. And by doing it in equity and ownership rather than a cash deal, the NFL gets to hang on to all that. They don't have to share it as part of their rev share because it's not cash. So it's actually pretty smart of them. It helps diversify their portfolio, and that part of the portfolio could become even more valuable if and when ESPN gets spun off of Disney, which there's some speculation that after Iger steps down could very well happen. And then another thing I learned was that they've offloaded some of the production responsibilities to ESPN, and like the NFL studios they have out in LA, ESPN is going to be responsible for kind of managing that, which is kind of a headache that NFL is only too happy to get out from under.
One negative to that, I think, particularly, it's been mentioned a little bit in the press, is that the NFL now does own a stake in ESPN, which is going to be covering the NFL. So what does that mean for objectivity concerns?
So how will ad inventory be divided between the ESPN app, NFL Plus, and other platforms? Kevin, will there be overlapping audiences or exclusivity by platform?
I think they're going to do whatever they need to do to sort of, have it be the sort of the nugget that pushes the D2C app. So they are going to, I'm sure, seamlessly integrate that when everything is done. So it just becomes an easier sell. But also for me, and it's just me speculating what it does mean, and some people have also reacted a little bit negatively to it, is commercials in RedZone. It's coming.
With ESPN gaining more control over NFL media assets, how might this shift its focus and resources for other properties? Kevin, could this create more competition or less visibility for non-NFL sports in ESPN's programming and ad inventory?
I think what it does is really give them sort of a leg up. And, as I kind of alluded to before, they will be able to use that to sort of incentivize people. We know everybody wants NFL. And as we've seen in the upfront marketplace this year, it can be a big draw. So if there are other sports or even other properties that ESPN or Disney are looking to package and looking to sell, they're going to have, the NFL be the carrot and force that. Additionally, and just the other thing I wanted to mention is they could also extend RedZone for like NHL or NBA or something like that.
Yeah. Greg, what new ad offerings might ESPN introduce under its ownership of the NFL Network?
Yeah, I want to touch on something that Kevin just alluded to, which is I think the RedZone is pretty interesting. There's been a lot of equity that's kind of been built into that, a lot of positive equity into that brand. And could ESPN expand that to other sports like NBA, college football, et cetera? Now, they have tried something like this before in the past and was unsuccessful. And part of the challenge there is that ESPN doesn't have like the full slate of NBA games or the full slate of college football games. So how do they package it in a way that's still meaningful to the viewer? Like, could it be positioned like the SEC RedZone? Or do they work in conjunction with NBA so that they can get more NBA rights to do highlights to cover more of that for an NBA RedZone? But I think they'd be smart to kind of tap into the equity of that brand and see if they can't expand to other sports.
So going back to the DTC platform, how does ESPN's shiny new app come into play with the newly acquired assets? What do you think, Kevin?
Well, I think that the way this deal is positioned, it's certainly going to be something that they'll be leading off with, sort of next year's upfront. And I also think, the fantasy aspect of it, because they're going to be taking over, ESPN and NFL Fantasy are going to merge. That's really going to be a very attractive product for the sports books.
Will ESPN's ownership change CPM pricing, inventory availability, or seasonality trends for NFL buys?
Yes. If they can charge more for it, they're definitely going to do that, and I think it's definitely going to be a premium offering.
So for Ocean Media, we're no stranger to NFL media buys. Greg, does this consolidation change our strategy?
Probably less so in the immediacy because the NFL content or the NFL is subject to regulatory approvals. And so, as Kevin alluded to, you're looking like the 25 or 26, 27 season. So when it does come on board, when ESPN comes up with introduces their D2C app, it's going to be a pass through. So they're not going to sell the inventory separately. So it's just an extension of their linear TV. When they start monetizing that inventory, I think that's when it's going to have a more dramatic impact on our strategy, because then we can really find different ways to leverage the content on there from a targeting, a messaging, and from a measurement standpoint. And I think that's when it gets pretty exciting.
Greg, Kevin, thank you for your time, and thank you all for watching. To learn more about advertising trends, brand strategy, and the future of sports media, visit oceanmediainc.com for all the latest news and insights.